Hello YouTube, Gora Radio Mosky here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. We're going to dig further into my stockpile of German beer that I've accumulated over the last couple of weeks, and we're going to look at the biggest brewery in Heidelberg for you today. And this is the Heidelberger Brauerei's Original. This is actually a special edition of this bottle, which has a bit where you can write your name on it, and it says underneath it, Mein Bier. And I tried to research why they actually did this for you. This just came out a few months ago actually. This bottle's a few months old, but I don't know why they put this on the bottle. I think it was just a little novelty thing, as I say. But as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a brief history of the company, tell you a little bit about the local area and all of this sort of thing. But as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go on towards the latter part of the video and you will catch that particular segment. But anyway, most of you watching a YouTube beer review channel will have heard of the Reinheitsgebot of 1516, of course the German purity law by which most German beer is actually brewed. And I didn't realise until recently, but you actually don't have to stick to the Reinheitsgebot. It's just a case of if you say it's Reinheitsgebot on the bottle when it's not, you can be done quite heavily for fraud and things like that. But what they will actually do in some cases is if they want the beer to have a certain colour, they'll brew two beers, one dark and one light, and mix them together until they get the right colour, and then they can say it's the Reinheitsgebot, because technically it is. But anyway, going on that's a little bit of a tangent. Going back onto the history of the brewery, there is actually a stricter code that was issued in 1603 for the city of Heidelberg, and it actually has further regulations on the brewing process and on the selection of raw materials, and this was introduced in the year 1603. And 150 years after the introduction of this law, the Heidelberger Brauerei was born in 1753. But by 1816 there were apparently a total of 38 breweries operating in the city of Heidelberg. For those of you who don't know where Heidelberg is, it's right in the middle of Frankfurt to the north and Stuttgart to the south, Baden-Württemberg, and I can't remember what state Frankfurt is actually in, but Heidelberg is right in the middle of these two things here. It's the site of the oldest university in Germany, Ruprecht Karls Universität Heidelberg, founded in 1384. A really beautiful town. I recommend you come here and visit if you get the chance. But the original property of the Heidelberger Brauerei changed many times, and it was continually growing, and it was taken over by the Kleinlein brothers back in the year 1820. And at this time the property was actually known as the Kleinlein after its owners, and it consisted of a residential house, a three-storey brewery, a steam engine, a refrigerated ship for the river, a stables, a malts house, and a rock cellar, which was where they would store the beer. But at this time they only brewed from September until May, and the extra production was actually embedded in the rock cellars under the castle, and they used ice from the Neckar River, which runs through the city, and also from the castle pond to cool this beer until it was ready to be sold in the summer. But back in these early days, all the hops and ingredients were locally cultivated, and the brewers actually had to rely on experience and observations to get their brew to come out correctly. But in 1870, the brothers bought another property in Bergstrasse, number 91. It's actually not far from where I live, and there they built a brand new brewery which became their main base. And the secret of their success was apparently brewing a light beer in the Viennese style, although unfortunately the brothers struggled with the finances of this brewery, having built such a costly facility, and they actually sold the brewery to engineer Louis Scholl, and the brewery was renamed at this point the Heidelberg Aktien Brauerei Kleinlein Heidelberg, and Karl Kleinlein actually remained as the brewmaster for a number of years and also as a board member until the year 1897. But by 1900 only 6 of the Heidelberger Brauereis actually remained. It was Kleinlein, the Schrödel, Angels, Golden Keg, Crown and Ziegler, and over the following 20 years many of these breweries were actually bought over or shut down, and so by 1920 only the Heidelberg Aktien Brauerei and the Angels Brauerei were left. And the progress of the Heidelberger Aktien Brauerei over this period was actually non-stop. In 1897 they appointed their first ice cream maker, and in 1912 they purchased their first motor cars for beer deliveries, and in 1912 they also set up new steam engines for the brewery as well. And these three events are actually quite common when you go and read about the history of a lot of German breweries. They like to point these particular events out for some particular reason, of course. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but by this time in 1912 the Heidelberger Aktien Brauerei was actually one of the largest breweries in Baden, and it was the leading local brewery in the city of Heidelberg. Now in 1914 Heidelberger used the castle image for the first time as their trademark, and this has stayed with the brewery ever since despite numerous changes in ownership. The brewery changed hands once in 1934 and then again in 1968 when it was bought by the Schultheiss Brauerei from Berlin, signalling the end of independence. The brewery was, however, allowed to continue to operate in Heidelberg, and in 1985 the brewery was actually renamed Heidelberger Brauerei AG, and then it was finally acquired by Werner Kindermann, and then it joined his restaurant chain in 1985. Now in 2005 the brewery was taken over by Michael Mack and then became the Heidelberger Brauerei, and that's its official name as it remains to this day, and apparently it is one of the few existing private breweries and the oldest existing brewery in Heidelberg. But Michael Mack has steered the brewery in the direction of environmental sustainability and sustainable company growth. But today they brew it in the Pfaffengrauen district of Heidelberg, and it's actually a very modern facility, and they use all raw materials from the local region. So if you try one of the Heidelberger beers, you're actually getting a proper local beer. Obviously it's not the same as the sort of small brew pubs with their real craft beer, if you like, but it is something that is quite interesting. It's all brewed locally. A lot of the other breweries in Germany will sort of bring in hops from all over Germany in different countries and things like that, so it's quite cool to have something that is sort of properly local in that sense. But to list the other Heidelberg beers for you, you have the 1603 Pils beer, which, as I mentioned earlier, is brewed according to the Heidelberg beer code. They have 1603 alcohol frei as well. They have the premium export Kristallweizen, Dunkelweizen, Hefeweizen, Helles, the Original, this guy here. They have a Pils, a Dunkel, a Naturtrub, which is a Keller beer, this one. They have Lenzenbock and also the Winter beer, of course. So that's the list of the Heidelberger beers, but let's get on to the tasting of this guy itself. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the actual label and things of this one. As I mentioned, this is a special edition of this bottle where you could write your name on it and it says underneath Mein Beer, but this is the Heidelberger Original, and as you can see there's the sort of castle logo on it here. This one is a pop top, and of course this is the same, this particular top label is the same regardless of whether it's a special edition or not, and there's nothing engraved on the top of the little pop top here. But this guy is actually a Kulsch beer, which I was surprised at when I was researching. It's a 4.7% Kulsch beer. The only other Kulsch beer that I've actually had is Früh Kulsch. I need to get more of those and review them for you, but without further ado, let's get on and actually get this guy reviewed and tasted. So I'll pop it open now and let's see how big a bang this guy makes. That one's not bad. As you can see, a lot of smoke coming out on the opening here, but let's get this guy out and into the bottle. I had this guy sitting for a little while actually. I thought this one was the 1603 Pils, but then I checked in my fridge before I was going to make the video and found out that it wasn't. Oh shit. Losing a little bit of the beer there. Didn't expect it to do that. We'll just get the last little bit of it out. Seal it up. As I mentioned, the Germans seem to be able to tell if you're foreign if you don't seal up your beer. So when you're in Germany, if you want to pretend that you're German, seal up your beer. So as you can see from me pouring this beer, it's a nice sort of rich straw golden colour. I'd say there's a finger of sort of bubbly head there, a bumpy head on this one. There's not so much carbonation actually visible in this one, but just some little bubbles going up to the top there, and the head's dissipating quite quickly on it there in my opinion. But in terms of the aroma here, it's actually quite a malty smelling one. It's a sort of bready malt and some kind of grainy aromas, cereals that you're getting on it. But definitely mainly a bready and grainy malt on the nose. Just a little bit of maybe toasted aroma there as well, but a very faint hint of some citrus as well. A very faint hint, sorry, of citrus there. But mainly a malty, bready one, and there is definitely a little hint of roasted character in there, but a bit of cereal as well at the same time. But let's give this guy a taste and see how we get on. And as you can see actually, the head on this guy has completely disappeared, and this is a 33 centilitre bottle if you're wondering why the mug's so small. On the opening, you're getting a good bit of herbal hop character actually, but then you're getting a sort of little bit of darker malt coming in pretty much right away. The malt base in the middle, after you get past that little initial bit of herbal hop character, it is quite a toasty, bready malt base, and there is just a little bit of caramel in there. This beer reminds me a little bit of one of the bitter beers that I had back home from the D-Side Brewery. It reminds me just a little bit of that in terms of the way it opens up and things. But yeah, it's definitely opening up with just a little bit of herbal character from the hops. the malt base comes in very, very quickly and chases that away, and you've got the nice toasted bready malt base with just a little bit of caramel in the background, and there's a little bit of cereal in there, which makes it, actually gives it that little bit of spice that makes it appear more like a bitter than a Kolsch, in my opinion. And you've got the grassy hops. I think grassy and citrus hops are coming out in the aftertaste in this one. But yeah, once you get past that bready malt base, you're sort of getting into some grassy and citric hops, and these guys are sort of staying around into the aftertaste. But it's got quite a bit of earthy character underlying throughout it, and it does resemble a bit. It does. I think it resembles some of the bitters that we get back at home in that sense. It definitely has a little underlying earthy character, and maybe that's why in the opening stages it kind of comes out as a herbal beer. Then you move into the malt base and then the hops, of course. But I think definitely a little hint of earthy character underlying on this one. I'm not sure so much that it fits the Kolsch style, but you know, you get beers that are very unique within their styles, of course, like the Paulaner Salvator that I reviewed for you a few videos ago. That's a very unique one in terms of the Doppelbox, in my opinion. But this guy, I'm not so sure it fits the Kolsch style, but it's a nice enough beer, and if it was classed as a bitter, I'd say it's quite a nice bitter, in my opinion. But in terms of the mouthfeel here, I'd describe this as mid-bodied. It's actually a little bit heavier than your sort of normal Kolsch beers, in my opinion. It's definitely a mid-bodied one. The carbonation, despite not being very visible, is actually quite active in this one, and it's a wet and oily mouthfeel, and actually a little bit watery. But as I say, the thing that surprises me with this beer is how active the carbonation is, because when I put this in the bottle there was none, so it's something that gives you a little surprise, I guess. But yeah, it's overall, it's an interesting beer. I'm surprised that it's classed as a Kolsch. Like I say, it reminds me a lot of some of the bitter style beers that we get back home in that sense. It's got a nice little bit of earthy character that underlies. It opens up with a bit of herbal hops, then you're moving into a sort of bready base with a nice, just a little nice hint of caramel, and then you've got the citric and grassy hops. It's quite an interesting one. Like I say, I'm not so sure how well it fits the Kolsch style, in my opinion. It resembles more of a bitter to me, so if you like that style and you're in the Heidelberg area, give it a try. If you have tried this beer yourself, please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on it. It's always interesting to hear what other people think about the different beers, and I've had quite a few comments like that recently where people are giving me their own opinions on the beer, so keep it up, please. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. I hope you found it informative. Give any of the Heidelberger Brauerei beers a try if you get the chance. I would recommend the Bock beer. I really like the Bock one, but give any other stuff a chance. It is all quite good. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I'll be back soon with another beer review. This time it will actually be a craft beer, the next one. So stay tuned for that, and thanks again for all your support over my 160 videos. Cheers.